Guys and ladies, welcome to week 4, module 4 of the SQL environment. So hopefully everyone had a good week. So this is a new week. This is actually, for those who are taking classes in person, this is the final week of classes in person, and the rest are remote. And then the following week is Thanksgiving break. But since you guys are online, you don't really have the break. You still have assignments, but I'll take it easy on you. Anyways, you see my background here. I want to talk a little bit about this. This place right here is the most amazing place. I would never known about it if it wasn't for my wife. Growing up, she was a big fan of orca whales. So they live in one part, well, not including Hawaii, but they mainly live in one part of the United States, and it's right here. This island's called the San Juan Islands. It is Friday Harbor, Washington, and this right here is called Limekiln State Park, and it's it's one of many locations in the on the island that you can see orcas, but this is the main location where they come through. So like this little lighthouse right here, which is a cool thing when you get to check it out. But typically there's scientists in here. Typically you could go in there, but during the COVID thing this past summer, we weren't able to go inside because they had it blocked off. But they have scientists on staff from Washington State University, and they do research on the whales and orcas. So they actually have a styrofoam hooked up in there so they can hear sounds. I wanted to pay to put a camera there and pay for it and donate money so that we could broadcast the orcas when they went by, but I haven't got that completely sold off to them yet. But anyways, I think it'd be pretty cool. It's a good experience to go here. It's an awesome place. We come here sometimes and stay here for 4 hours. It's just amazing. Water is actually never the temperature of the water is never higher than 50 degrees and never lower than 47 degrees, no matter if it's in the heat of winter or if it's in August and summer or whatever. Always the same. And over here you can see this little island here. This is called Vancouver Island. So this is actually Vancouver, Washington, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And there is a town, a bigger town over here called Victoria, Canada, and that's basically where that's at right here, which is looks like it's a touch away. But awesome place. I know this week is not about this, but I just wanted to open up because I just see my background and I thought about it. I was like, this is a cool place to visit. Taking our kids here, it's an absolutely amazing place. Small island, but crazy stuff that you can do, outdoor stuff. It's like me growing up without the internet. All right, actually to work. So I'm using Sublime for my editor. We're going to talk about data types and functions this week. So at this point, we've kind of cross-pattern when you create your own database and stuff like that, which we haven't did yet. But anyways, some of the data types that we have in place. So we have a character. We have fields for numeric values, date and time, JSON, so forth. So it's important to know what type of data that you're getting when you're building your database environment. I'm looking back because I have another class going on. We've already did this, so I want to see where we're at. Yeah, okay. We haven't designed a database in here yet, so it's important to know when you design your database what type of field that you're using, what type of data that you're putting in it, and so forth. So for example, let's say that, right here I'm using this editor. Let's say that we're setting up a database table and it consisted of some fields. So like first name, maybe we had last name, maybe we had city, state, zip, and maybe we also had phone number, and maybe we had date added, stuff like that. So these are common fields, and let's also put in here, we'll pretend that employee will say starting salary, ending salary. Well, we'll put start date, end date, ending salary. I'm trying to think of all the different fields that we can have. So you have all these fields, so you know that you want to build a table, and so you build a table, table name, we'll call it employee information. And it's actually very personal. So we'll say person, employee. So you want to have some type of common name that you call everything. So maybe in this case here, call it employee, and we could say person information. So if you had another table, it might be employee something else, etc. So I always say brainstorm what fields that you want to do in Excel or some type of, or documents or whatever. So there's different data types, and these data types are important. So it's important to know what type of data that you're entering in, what is the data type that you're going to use, what's the maximum amount of characters or numbers that are going to be in your field column, and etc. And then knowing what type it is. So for example, first name, you could use, in this case right here, you want to use something called a varcar. So varcar has open and close brackets. What that means is you put how much space you want to allow. So for example, let's say that we only put 15 in here, right? And someone goes into, let's say, I'm just going to put this down here. They ask for in the screen here and in the database, and they have to put first name. And the first name is, let's see, Randolph William Swinger the third. Okay, so obviously that's more than 15 characters. So what would happen is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, so what would happen is it would only input that information into the table. This stuff right here would be truncated and it would not even exist. It wouldn't even make it to the table. So when you go back and run the query, you would just see Randolph William. You'd be like, well, who the hell is that? So it's important to make sure you set your amount of characters up properly, because in this case right here, we need, let's see, 16, 17, 18. So that's about 30. So to play it safe, because you don't know what you're going to get, I tell people to put like 45 to 50 as the random. So I'll start off at 50. And if it's over 50, we'll figure it out. Okay, so in the case this here, like first name, last name, varchar is 50 is perfect for what you're trying to do. Now city, you just think about city, how big can a city be? I think 50 is a pretty good start. Now state is different. State, typically, if you've ever noticed, not often is the state completely spelled out. It's usually abbreviated by the two letters. So this is where we don't use a varchar. We use something called a car. So it's like this. We would do char2. Now a car is different. A car is absolute exact space. Okay. So for example, let's say you set up a char for 10 spaces and you only fill in 2 spaces. So we have PA, and then we have 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are blank right there, okay? So that takes up extra space against your table. So those extra fields are not being used. Now, if I did a varchar, I'll show you an example. So if I did a varchar and I did 10, and let's say I put PA, and I did the same thing. I did like that. So this doesn't charge the space. It doesn't count against the space. I mean, it does, it doesn't. But here's what happens is when I do a query, so let's say I'd say select all from my table, which is employee person information. I'm going to zoom this in so it could be seen. And I say where state equals PA. So if it's a char, do you think it'll be found? No, because when it says where state equals PA and it looks for those 2 spaces, it's not going to find it because it's going to say that doesn't exist. How you would have to do it is you would have to put a space in here up to 8 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that way it shows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 spaces. That's the only way of doing it. Now, is this the right way of doing it? Absolutely not. Because any program that you write would have to be special influence, and it would be a pain in the butt. So that's why you do best practice. So you would set this up to 2 instead. So that way, if you set it up to 2, which is right, you can easily say where state equals PA. You know why? 2 spaces, piece of cake. So remember that. Only use a char when you know exactly how many characters are going to be in it. I use state, for example, because that's perfect, because you're only going to use 2 characters for state. Same thing with zip code. Depending on the situation, a lot of people just do the 5. Maybe they do the 9 and 10 with a hyphen in it. So typically I'll just do 5, and I'll do a char 5, something like that. Phone number, same thing. You could do the same thing with a phone number. Phone number is going to be the same, but you have to throw in the but. You know where your data is going to be stored at. So here in the United States, our phone number convention is like set 412. We have a prefix, say 555, and then we have our 4 digits. So we know off the bat it's going to be 10 characters. So however we want to store in a database, do we want to store as 10 characters? Do we want to have the hyphens in there? That's up to you. But typically in this case, I know it's going to be, it has to be at least 10 characters. So in this case, I have no problem making it a char 10. But most of the time, I'll just say varcar 10 or varcar 12. But I try to make sure that it's all the same. So if I had 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 7, I want to see it in the database this way. I would prefer not to have to see the hyphens, because if I'm doing a search on it, then I have to look for the hyphens. So that's what I would do. Date added. This one's different because you'll have date time, you'll have date. So in this case right here, I would probably use just date. You just have to use date. You don't have to use anything else. And then what it'll do is it'll provide the date for you. Starting salary, I will use decimal. So decimal is an interesting one because you have to put you have to put like how many characters that you're going to go over. So for example, sometimes people, when they're doing reports of some sort, they might want all the numbers, like for example, like we might have let's say we have a value of $98. Well, salary wouldn't be $98, so we'll say salary is annually $45,000. Won't use commas. We'll say 45,000 and 98 cents. I don't know why the 98 cents, but we'll say that. But let's say that in retrospect, it's even higher. It's like 8, 7, 6, 5, something like that. Well, these are positions right here to the right. So it's padding positions that you have to decide how many padding positions you have and what number you want to use on those padding positions. So typically, the first start or origin for the decimal would be 9. It's always 9. And then it's comma. It could be 2 if we had 2 positions. So if we just had 98 cents, it would be 2. If we were going to use 4 positions, we would do 4. And you could do all the way up to 8. So it just depends. But in this case right here, I'm just going to do 2 because I know I'm only interested in that information. Date, we talked about. Date, we talked about. Now we've got salary at decimal 92. Now, one thing I didn't talk about, let's say that we had at the top up here, we come up here and we had employee ID. Okay. Employee ID is going to be a number, so a whole number. So we use the int. So int doesn't have an open close because it's a whole number. But there are different ints. There's small int, tiny int. You could have int, you could have tiny int, and you could have big int. Big int is if when you're using a lot of numbers. Tiny int is when you're just using no more than 9, like 0 to 9. Integer is a whole number. Most of the time, actually, let me apologize. Tiny int sometimes gets used as. Let me make sure I'm recording this. Oh my God, if I'm not recording this, I did this one day. All right, tiny int could be used as a boolean expression as well. So boolean is not really expressed in MySQL. So Boolean expression is either true or false. So a lot of times it will automatically define to default to a tiny int. And what that means is it gives it a value of 1 or 0. So 0 would be false, 1 would be true. But in this case, if we're doing employee ID, we just make it an integer. Where'd my mouse go? Lost my mouse. All right, so we make it an integer in this case. And you don't have to put the capacity of it or nothing like that. So that's important to know. And then it would be a whole number. So all integers are all whole numbers, and so forth. So let's see here. Just trying to think about anything else that we can talk about that I miss on data types. Now we'll do some stuff, but I'm just trying to think out loud. Those are the typical data types that you'll use. So like int is a whole number, as I just mentioned. Some will have time as well, but sometimes that'll be in the date time. So you can, another thing I mentioned is, or I didn't mention, you could do date or you could do date time. And start date would be probably date versus date time, but maybe like, let's say that data added, for example. Maybe you would do date time because you could put the time that was added for the application. And to me, that's important because it can make some type of sense for some reason. You know what I mean? Whatever the case is, it'll have something to do with something. So, all right. So let's move on. All right, so we should talk about some other things while we're at it, is converting and casting. So what is converting and casting? So I'm gonna set up a new template here. So converting and casting. So this is like my lecture right here. Convert is when you convert something, like a number, over to a string. So let's say that for some reason you want to convert a number to a string. You can do it. So let's say that you had a number of, I don't know, 361 or 3423 33, and right now it's an integer, but for some reason you want to convert it to a number. You can, or to a string. And why? And why would you want to do that? That's a question. Well, maybe how your code is going, maybe there's a reason that you want to push it out so that it could be readable. Maybe it's going to be like a message or something like that. Anything like that. Just give me a break here. I'll be right back. I had to take a break. All right, so here's what we do. Cat was in here meowing crazy. Didn't want to hear that. So we're gonna switch over to the LectureLab aspect. So we'll go back and forth with the this thing right here. But I figured it's help. So we'll use our AP database and we'll convert a number to a string. So let's say select. Let me find a table here. Invoices. Oops. All right, I need to look what's in there. So we'll say invoice total, and we'll concatenate. So when I query, I like to do it this way. So that way, if I'm debugging it, if something happens, I can easily go back and look at it. So I'll do a concat right here, and I'll pass in a $, and then I'll do comma, and then I'll do invoice total, and I'll do as invoice total. Like that, and then we'll do it from our invoices table. There we go. And you see down here we have our grid. It provides our invoice total, invoice total. So the only difference is when I did invoice total itself, it was just the number. But if I want to add a $sign to it, I could do it this way. But let's say I wanted to convert a string to a number. I could do this. So let's say convert string to a number. So I could do select, and I could do invoice date, in this case, invoice number. Why did I say date? Invoice number. And then I could come down here and give it a number, like I'm looking at one of the numbers on here. Let's say 856. We'll do it 4901. I see it down there. 49001. We'll say that right there. 4901, which is on line 26. Something like that. We'll make it 6 digits. And we'll do convert, which looks like a division number. And then we'll take the invoice number. And I'll say as converted number. And then I'll say from invoices. Just like that. And I'll highlight it. And you see how it gets converted over. So it takes that number, invoice number. Well, we use the invoice number. And then I took the number 490126 and converts it over to a number. So as you see, the number is like really crazy. So that is one way that you can convert it over if there is a reason for converting a number over from a string. Let's say that we wanted to convert a date to a number. Like for example, let's say select invoice date, and then we want to do invoice date +1. I'll say as number, and then I'll put numbers because it'll not like that, from invoices. So if we run this here, you see how the number, it goes from the date where it's like it has the hyphen. I'm sorry, this is not big enough. That is one thing it does not allow me to make big, unfortunately. There's probably some way on here, I'm not sure, but anyways, it's this right here, and then it's it converts to a number, so it takes the hyphens out is what it's doing. Okay, so that is convert a date to a number. Oops, there we go. Hopefully that helps out a little bit, guys and ladies, on some of the stuff. Casting, not casting for an actor. Casting is when you cast a expression as a certain type. So there might be a reason that you want to cast an expression as a integer or as a string or whatever. Some cast types that you can use in these functions are the char that we talked about, date, date time, time, decimal. Those are some of the more fun ones that you would use. So trying to think of one that we could use. Let's try this. I'm going to start a new screen here. So I'm going to do use, now the changes down here, make it 200 so we can use it. Use AP, and we'll do select invoice ID, invoice date, invoice total. Let me see here. And now we want to cast, so we could say cast. I'm going to make it uppercase. You don't have to. And then already folded it down. So we'll say invoice date, since we talked about date, as a char. So let's see here real quick. Let me query that real quick, see what we get on invoice date. So we got 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. So we have 10 spaces. So we know it has 10 spaces. So I'll make a char 10. And I'll do open close, and then what we do is we put another bracket which closes this cast here. Okay, so we closed it, and then we'll give it a name. I'll say, now you don't have to say, I'm gonna say char date, but I'm gonna show you something. You don't have to put as, you could just put the name of the new field, and we'll do it in the next one. So I'll show you cast, and we'll do invoice total as signed, and we'll say, instead of as, we'll just say integer total. And you'll see that either this or this will work the same. Okay. And we'll say from invoices. just like that. And we'll query it. And look at that. Integer total and char date, they look the same. You don't have to do as, but I'm showing you both ways. So we have our char date, which I thought would be without the hyphens, but I know because we did 10, so it will be the hyphens because we used as a car. Duh. All right, if we did 8, then it would be cut off, I think. So let's see. Yeah, so it cuts it off as I expected. So the only difference is that it works this way. It has the same thing, but you convert it the field to a char instead of invoice date. And what that means is if we wanted to query on it and say where date equals this, it would be different because now we're querying on a char versus querying on a date. So something to look out at. Okay. Some of the things in the book to me are a little too advanced, so I try to skip them and not spend much time on it. So let me try to think of another one that we could talk about. What else can we talk about? I think that's pretty good to be exact. Yep, I think we're good there. So this would end the first video. The first video is more about data types. Our next video will be on functions, so I don't want to put that in the same video. Even though for the online class it's in the same process, but if you're doing the in-person class, it's different. But anyways, it doesn't matter. So we will stop this video here. If you have any questions, you know how to reach me. If not, thank you and have a nice day.